Brownies is a short story by Z.Z. Packer that was published in 2003 in her collection of short stories titled Drinking Coffee Elsewhere. I think that this story is perhaps the most complex story that we've read this semester, and I don't think that this PowerPoint does it full justice, but at least we'll hit on some of the main parts of the story. But just know that much more could be said about it, and if you decide to write your research paper over it, I think you could have quite a bit to say. So the cultural milieu in this story, the girls are at a Girl Scout camp called Camp Crescendo, set in the 1980s, and we're told in the story that the African American Brownies are from the south suburbs of Atlanta, and it's clear that they live in segregated neighborhoods because there's only one white kid in their school, and they see the white girls as invaders. It's a term that's used in the story. Different from them with their long shampoo commercial hair, straight as spaghetti from the box. So they're not used to being in school with these, with the white girls. They're not used to having them live in their neighborhood. They don't have friends who are white. And of course we see that one of the words that they use to insult or critique everything about them, around them in their lives, is the word Caucasian. So if something is stupid or silly or, just wrong in some way, it's Caucasian. And then religion appears to be an important part of their lives. We know it's definitely important for the troop leader, Mrs. Margolin. She is a member of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, or the AME as it's usually known, and believes that her role is to teach the girls about Christianity. So it seems like that's what she is most focused on, that she's not really most interested in teaching them about nature and how to survive out in the wilderness, how to maybe make a fire, or how to figure out which plants you can eat or that you couldn't eat, or how to figure out what direction you should be going in if you don't have other ways to figure it out. There you are alone. So her focus seems to be on teaching the little girls about the Bible, about Christianity, teaching them to be good. That is her focus. And then we can know about the time period. So this is in the 1980s, and it's the allusions to popular music of the early 1980s that really let us know what the time period of the story is. So we know that there is an allusion to Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Then they talk about Michael Jackson's song, Beat It. And they bring up the song Karma Chameleon that was by Culture Club. And while Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five were popular during the 80s, he was considered, Grandmaster Flash was considered one of the first hip-hop pioneer hip-hop music, rap music. We know, though, that Michael Jackson's song Beat It and the song Karma Chameleon, I can't even say it, both came out in 1983. So that sets it pretty clearly in that time period. And that seems kind of surprising then that we're focused on then the racism in the story, because it seems that this would be a time when this would be integrated, right? There would be both white and black girls, and Asian and Latinx, all of those children would be mixed by the 80s, but that doesn't seem to be the case, of course, in this story. Again, came from segregated neighborhoods, and so they weren't living in an integrated lifestyle. The narrative structure of the story, well, we know that the point of entry, we find out something that kind of, I think, piques our interest right at the beginning, and that is that the girls in the narrator's Brownie troop want to kick the asses of every girl in Brownie troop 909. Right? And it's only later that we learn why. But we also learn that what kind of person the leader of the narrator's troop, Mrs. Margolin, is. We know a little bit. We find a little more about the parent helper, Mrs. Hetty, and then the other girls in the troop, and again how they use language, like the multi-syllable words, and we learn that they live in this in a segregated neighborhoods. There's nobody in their school except for one kid who is white. The inciting moment then is when Arnetta tells the girls that the white girls called Daphne the N-word. Right? And so we didn't know at the point of entry what had caused them to be angry, but we then learn what that inciting moment is. Right? So it had to happen before we actually start the story. Then the crisis is when, the girls made their plan. What are they going to do? Well, they're going to go to the restroom where there's not going to be any adults around and confront the girls who they feel have insulted them. And so Arnetta, Octavia, and Janice are the three who go into the bathroom to confront the white girls, while the other girls wait for the signal. And the climax then is when the narrator and the other girls join their friends in the bathroom, even though they never hear the signal. Right? They figure they better, go in and see what's going on. That's when they discover that the white girls are mentally challenged. It doesn't seem that they would have purposefully been using racial slurs. That it wouldn't be that wouldn't have been in their ability to, process that kind of hurtful words. They're not that kind of a kid. And then finally, the denouement, or the resolution. That's right at the end when we get kind of the lesson is thinking back kind of on what has happened and how it affects them in their lives. So when Laurel tells a story about her father and the Mennonites coming to the house and painting the porch because they have to do whatever someone asks them as part of their religion. They have to do that kind of a favor, help somebody else out. She realizes that there was something mean in the world that she could not stop. So, there's a lesson that, yes, white people do bad things and treat black people unfairly, but somehow her father letting the people come or asking them to come to paint the porch and then not saying thank you, but wanting them, to see them on their knees, doing some kind of work for him, that wasn't really a good thing either. The narrative point of view in this story, I think that it is interesting, even though it's first person singular and we're used to that kind of first person singular narrator. Again, Laurel seems to be a very complex individual, complex little girl. So Laurel is telling the story of her troop's visit to Camp Crescendo. We see everything through her eyes. And we don't, though, actually know her real name until almost the end of the story because everyone calls her Snot. And so we can tell just from that nickname they have for her that she is not high on the hierarchy of the kids, right? She's not the little girl that they're going to be looking up to and following and imitating what she does, right? It's not going to be that way. That puts her way down there on the totem pole. And then because the story is told from her perspective, readers learn what Laurel thinks of the other characters. And her descriptions of Mrs. Margolin, Mrs. Hetty, Arnetta, and Octavia are fairly critical. Right? We can see that she's looking at them, kind of from the eyes of an outsider, even though she's part, of course, of their neighborhood, of the school, of the Brownie troop. But she is not kind of in that inner circle, and she kind of sees them through, again, these critical eyes and judging them and making critiques about them because, again, she's not just like wholly accepted, a total part of the group in the same way that, let's say, Arnetta and Octavia are. And it does, though, seem that she wants to be friends with the other girls, but she knows that she is not accepted and looked up to like Arnetta and Octavia. There's a part where when they're going to the restroom, and she says, she feels like she is a part of that group. These are her friends, and she's going to be part of what they're going to do next. But most of the time, she doesn't feel like that, which is one reason why she looks to Daphne, and she thinks that maybe they could be friends, because Daphne is quieter, doesn't go along with everything like that Arnetta and Octavia want to do, and seems to be a more sensitive kind of person because, again, the poem that she wrote, maybe has some depth to her too. But again, that is not easy for her either, because Daphne doesn't respond right in the way that that she would like her to. But what she reveals about herself as she's telling about what happened to them at the camp and some other things about their lives, it shows that she is a very smart girl, a very intelligent girl, and a deep thinker. Now, she's the only one who realizes that the only time the white girls will be unsupervised is when they're in the bathroom. And so she tells that. Octavia tries to brush it off, but Arnetta realizes, that's true. This is when we're going to get our chance to confront those girls when no one else is around. And then she admires the poem Daphne wrote and enjoys reading encyclopedias. And it's not just that she, likes poetry, but she likes it because it's not just obvious and clear cut. She feels like there's a deeper meaning to the words, and she would like to, to get to the bottom of it. And then she clearly understands that her father asking the Mennonites to paint his porch and not thanking them was not right and good, just as sending only the mentally challenged white Brownies to the same camp as the African American Brownies was not right or good. So for a little girl who's at the age to be in a Brownie troop, she shows some really kind of insight into the actions of others, as well as then herself and human nature.